Our journey continues. The road goes ever on and on. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. So The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers is the second chapter of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movie trilogy, and it picks up pretty much where Fellowship of the Ring left off. At the end of Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf fell to the shadow when he was fighting the Balrog. Boromir was killed by Uruk-hai, which are these big, juiced-up orcs, and these orcs took Merry and Pippin away, and so Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are chasing after them. They're gonna go rescue Merry and Pippin. Meanwhile, Frodo is like, I'm gonna take this ring to Mordor on my own. But Sam is like, I'm going with you because Gandalf told me, don't you lose him, Samwise Gamgee. And I don't mean to. So this is The Two Towers. The Fellowship of the Ring is scattered throughout the entire movie. And so we spend these 4 hours jumping back and forth between the characters. And this is the thick of it too. This is the middle of the Lord of the Rings story. So this is where we really get a taste of what the Lord of the Rings is all about. The situation regarding the fate of Middle-earth is growing more and more dire. The race of men is really discovering its place in this story. But I'll get to them in a bit. Cause I'm gonna start off with Frodo and Sam. Cause really they are the point of the whole thing. Yeah, sure, mankind is rising up as a new power in Middle-earth, or at least they're trying to, but Frodo being the ring bearer, the one who carries the one ring, this is the fate of Middle-earth. If he fails, then there is just no point in even bothering to try. So he and Sam, they're kind of wandering to Mordor. They don't really know where they're going. And here is where we meet one of the most memorable characters in Lord of the Rings, Gollum. Gollum is this really tormented little creature. He's played by Andy Serkis via motion capture. I'll get to that in a minute. We actually learned in the first movie that Gollum had the ring for 500 years. And he was addicted to it. He was twisted and warped by it. Because that's just the power of the ring. That's what it does to people. So Gollum had this ring until it was taken by Bilbo Baggins. Ah, okay, so it's all coming together. So Gollum still has a grudge against hobbits, so he's been tracking Frodo and Sam. He finally catches up with them, and so they reluctantly agreed to drag him along. But the thing about Gollum is that you can see that he kind of does want to help. However, he has another personality in his head. See, he was originally known by the name Smeagol. This was before he found the ring. The ring gave him this other darker, more evil, sinister personality, which is where the name Gollum comes from. This kind of cough noise that he does, Gollum, Gollum. So really, in that head of his, there's Smeagol and then there's Gollum. Again, that's just the power of the one ring, or as Gollum calls it, my precious. Now, Andy Serkis played the CG character with motion capture, which I'm pretty sure this is like the first real use of motion capture in a movie like this, or at least the first one that I know of. Now, seeing as this movie came out about 20 years ago, you look at Gollum in this movie and you're like, yeah, alright. It's a little bit dated, but it's not that bad. He still looks great. And given the fact that Elijah Wood and Sean Astin had to interact with this thing that wasn't even there, you gotta give him props for that. This was really the genesis of Andy Serkis's long career in motion capture and CG in movies. One that will be known as legendary. But we also see that the ring is starting to become a heavy burden for Frodo. We actually see that the ring is starting to have the same effect on Frodo that it had on Gollum, and you realize Bilbo as well. Frodo's becoming a little more emotionally distant, more standoffish. Sam is having a harder time talking to him, which allows for Gollum to easily corrupt him. Cause Frodo and Gollum both being ring bearers at one point, they have that connection. They both know what it's like to be with this precious ring. Samwise doesn't have that, but comparing him to Gollum, I would call him the more objective of the two. It gets tough for Frodo. Now we jump over to Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Like I said, they are chasing the orcs that kidnapped Merry and Pippin. There is that one scene where they come up on the smoldering orc pile, and they believe the hobbits to be dead, and Aragorn kicks this orc head, and he just yells in rage. That was actually Viggo Mortensen breaking his foot while they were filming, believe it or not. And so I imagine Peter Jackson must have been like, alright, cut, good take, Viggo. Oh shit. But we do actually learn that the hobbits are alive. Merry and Pippin actually made it out of that situation. They crawled into Fangorn Forest, where they meet Treebeard the Ent. What are Ents? Well, they're pretty much walking trees. And this, I actually think this is a really cool part of the movie. Cause when Treebeard is talking to Merry and Pippin, you get the sense that there is so much history and wisdom and age in his voice. He's voiced by John Rhys-Davies, that's the same man who plays Gimli in these movies. And so Treebeard is walking through this forest, he has Merry and Pippin, action. And sure, to some people it might feel like slow time filler, but to me it just doesn't, because I'm just in awe of Treebeard. I want to talk with him. I want to have a good, lengthy conversation with him over a cup of coffee. I want him to give me his best poetry, and I don't even like coffee. Besides, when it does get to the end of this Treebeard arc in this movie, it does pay off big. They get to this point in the forest where it's just desolated. We see all these rotten tree stumps, and Treebeard is like, Saruman, a wizard should know better. And so he calls the rest of the Ents and they go to war on Isengard. Now at this point I should mention Saruman. Saruman is the white wizard played by the great Christopher Lee. He used to be a force for good, but now he's actually working with Sauron. So yeah, he's a villain now. He operates from the Tower of Orthanc in Isengard. He's gathering his followers. He's pretty much the main antagonist in this movie. He's the main threat here. And I should have mentioned this before. Sauron himself is represented in this trilogy as a big flaming eye in Mordor atop the Tower of Barad-dûr. So that's what the two towers is, Orthanc and Barad-dûr. Saruman and Sauron, that's bad news. Also, the Nazgûl are still out there, and now they're riding these big winged dragon-like beasts. Yeah, evil is rising. Hope is looking pretty scarce. However, we do come across an ally that we did not expect. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli meet him in the forest, Gandalf the White. Yeah, we learned that Gandalf survived his battle with the Balrog, and somehow he was transformed from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, which is really Saruman as he should be. Gandalf is now the White Wizard, he's more powerful, and he's still a force for good. One of the million reasons that I just love Gandalf. So he joins Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and they all come on to Rohan. Now, Rohan is actually my favorite place in Middle-earth, because this is the land of the horsemen. We have the city of Edoras, where resides King Theoden, played by Bernard Hill, and he's actually one of my favorite characters in Lord of the Rings, because again, he's just so good. He's such a benevolent king. His best moments actually come a little later in the story. Don't worry though, I'll touch on them when I get to them. And we also meet Theoden's niece and nephew, Éomer, played by Carl Urban, and Éowyn, played by Miranda Otto. Now, Éowyn is an interesting character. She wants to fight, she wants to be part of Theoden's army, but her being a woman, she's not really allowed to. I guess this would be Lord of the Rings' take on feminism, which is cool, and you're good with it because you end up really liking Éowyn. And I also want to take this opportunity to talk about another character. Yeah, I know, there are a lot of characters in Lord of the Rings. Big shock. But Arwen. Okay, so Arwen, who's played by Liv Tyler, she's actually the love interest to Aragorn. She's an elf. She's actually the daughter of Lord Elrond. There's a point in this movie where Arwen is talking with her father about how she's immortal, Aragorn is not, so Elrond advises against her relationship with him because he will eventually die, but she won't. Elrond doesn't want that depression and sadness for his daughter. And you do understand, oh yeah, for sure. And so there is that internal conflict within Arwen. It's pretty good. It's really emotional. Again, the emotions really hit hard in Two Towers, as they did in Fellowship of the Ring. Jumping back to Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, they end up coming across Faramir. Now, Faramir, who's played by David Wenham, we learn that he is actually Boromir's brother, and it's from him that Frodo learns that Boromir is dead. And so Faramir realizes that Frodo is the ring bearer, and coming from the capital city of Minas Tirith and Gondor, he's like, ooh, Gondor could really use that. Also because we learned that his father Denethor is a straight up asshole. I'll touch more on him later on. And so Faramir's like, you know what? I don't care about your quest. We are taking the ring to Gondor because I need to please my father. A chance for Faramir, Captain of Gondor, to show his quality. And this is bad because we actually heard Galadriel say that if the Captain of Gondor gets his hands on the ring, this quest will fail and the world will fall to darkness. So we're like, uh-oh. I hope Frodo and Sam and Gollum get out of that situation, and they do. Yeah, Faramir eventually does let them go, because he's like, you know what, kid, you're alright. So that's a relief. Meanwhile, in Rohan, they learn that Saruman's army of orcs and Uruk-hai and wicked men, they're coming to Edoras. So instead of standing up and fighting, Theoden is like, alright, we'll evacuate the city, and we'll make for the refuge of Helm's Deep. Which unfortunately doesn't help much, because once the orc army gets to Helm's Deep, we have our first real big war scene in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This is the Battle of Helm's Deep. This is the climax of the Two Towers. And it is quite epic. This is like at least a solid hour of the movie, honestly. And you really feel it too. There's a lot of slow-mo, and this is where you realize, oh yeah, this is not a casual watch anymore. We started off in Fellowship of the Ring in the Shire. It was casual, it was fun, but now we are in full war, and people are dying. It's brutal. I mean, there is the little game that Legolas and Gimli play, which I love. They count their kills, and it's a competition between the two, and I find it hilarious. But aside from that, this war is just dude, it's awesome. And the reason it feels so long, well, I mean, it is long. The Two Towers is a 4-hour movie. That is, if you watch the extended edition, which is how you watch The Lord of the Rings. I've actually never seen the theatrical editions of the Lord of the Rings movies, which is me saying, yeah, I never saw them in theaters when they came out. I've only ever seen the extended editions, but I'm fine with that. Cause why settle for less when you can have more? Now, as for Howard Shore's music in The Two Towers, one of my favorite themes in the entire trilogy is introduced here, and it's the Rohan theme. It's that violin solo, man. It's just beautiful, man. Great stuff. So The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, I will say might be the toughest to watch of the three, because again, this is right in the thick of the story. We are at war, we have most of our characters now, we have expanded Middle-earth, the stakes are getting very high, because evil is just winning. Frodo and Sam and Gollum, it's not a great relationship going on there. The world of men and Rohan, they're not doing so hot, but as Sam says, there is still hope, there's still good in this world, and it's worth fighting for. That's what The Two Towers is all about. And now, we are almost at the end. Stay tuned for one of the most epic cinematic conclusions you will ever see in your life. So, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Have you seen it? Have you seen this trilogy? Where does The Two Towers rank in your hierarchy? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace.